So, hello to all of you. Today I'm going to talk about the three major planetary crises that we have in our world. Unfortunately, we actually have four. We have a peace crisis that actually endangers the other crises that the United Nations already found as critical for humanity during the next years. This is a really nice and important and inspirational picture. It was taken by Apollo 17, the last mission to the moon. On the way to the moon, it was on December the 7th, 1972, and they were at a distance of 27,000 kilometers going to the moon. And it was the best picture because you actually have, as you should, have the sun and their back, and all the Earth was getting that sun, showing that we don't need a planet. Planetary is more than sufficient. And what are these three crises? Basically, a climate crisis, probably the greatest challenge that we have for humanity, the biodiversity crisis, where we have not only species, but mostly ecosystems that are being destroyed or degraded, and also a resource pollution crisis, where we have too much consumption for the population that we have in the planet, and with a lot of inequality. Let's start with the climate crisis. The 10 hottest years on record. Here you have it. We have clear data since we started to use thermometers in the 19th century in the middle. And you can see from this data, and they are actually in order, that 2025 was the third warmest and 2024 was the warmest. And actually, if you look at these last three, they are much over all the others that we can see on record since 1940. So it's a huge difference, a huge chunk that we have in the last years. And the climate crisis is actually a product of our civilization. And not only we have the emissions from coal power plants, from natural gas, which is actually fossil fuel, by the way, oil used in transportation in the different modes, but we also have forests being degraded. And that is an issue, an important issue, because by forest fires, all that carbon that is stored goes to the atmosphere, and at the same time, we're losing that forest due to cuts, particularly when you take that forest out from very productive, important areas like the tropical forests, including the Amazon. And when we look at fossil fuels, and now we should really look at this graph and look at the percentage of oil that we are using and constantly increasing, we understand that we really need to shift, not only in Portugal, but in other countries, shifting to renewable sources because of the vulnerability that we have with the different wars, particularly in Iran right now. But that's the origin of the climate crisis is basically burning fossil fuels. And by the way, this is the heat that is absorbed by the atmosphere, and where it's already almost 1.5 degrees warmer compared with the middle of the 19th century. But we were saved by the oceans. Look at the amount of heat that the oceans have been taking throughout the time. Here we are. You know, it's just amazing. If we didn't have some percent of our surface covered by oceans and a huge volume of water, we just couldn't have all this heat being absorbed, and the atmosphere would not be just 1.5, it would be several degrees. So the planet is suffering, the ocean is suffering with this climate crisis. And António Guterres, the Portuguese Secretary General of the United Nations, he himself and his staff just put up other words to talk about this crisis. We are on the highway to planet hell with our foot on the accelerator. And this was in one of the United Nations conference in Egypt in 2022. But after, just 1 year after, he said that, we're not in the era of global warming. We are now in the era of global poisoning. And we have these pictures also in Portugal and other countries. We managed to have an agreement in 2015, the Paris Agreement, to meet net zero greenhouse gases emissions by 2050. But we are far away from achieving that goal, and we are actually above 1.5 clearly. And we really need to have, a different sets of policies and measures to contribute. And here you have the cost of carbon, political instability, floods, mudslides, wildfires, droughts, storm management, also desertification, infrastructure, law, climate refugees, you name it. And much more, the number one threat to the global economy. And from this first process that actually the politicians and civil society and others have tried to tackle throughout the annual conference of the parties, like the last one in Belém in Brazil, let's move to another conference of the parties, another prevention. Unfortunately, in this one and in the next ones, apparently the United States will be out of this discussion. But COP15 took place in 2022, and this conference of the parties, is about another prevention, not the climate change, but the biodiversity. And it was like the Paris Agreement for the biodiversity. We have goals for 2030 and for 2050. And these targets and goals were particularly important. Look, we're currently destroying more forest than we are planting. And these are the rates. And the goal is to have by 2030 a neutral target. Basically, what we plant be equal to what we unfortunately take up. But we're far from this target. And this important conference actually said that by 2030, at least 30% of the land, inland and coastal waters and marine areas should be effectively conserved. We also have to take care and recover 30% of the degraded areas. Also 2030 targets, let's take out of the potential invasive alien species 50% by 2030. Let's reduce the pollution risks. Let's eliminate species extinctions linked to human activity by 2050. This is really, we're still 25 years almost far away, but we're far from this. Let's reduce tenfold the risk of endangering or causing the extinction of species. Let's increase the abundance of native wildlife species, maintain the genetic diversity, and let's use and manage biodiversity in a sustainable way to recognize how nature is important to all of us, because nature actually survives without us. We do not survive without nature, and we're part of it. And let's talk now about 1972. Crazy though, I'm older. I was born before 1972. That might give you a guess how old I am, even though I lost my hair when I was 18. But 1972 was really important because it was the first United Nations conference on human development. And it took place in Stockholm, and 50 years after this conference, there was another conference, Stockholm plus 50, where we got these figures. And these figures are just amazing. Only about 0.1 of the hundreds of global targets that we have been achieved. So we have a lot of things on paper, not in practice. The use of natural resources tripled since 1970 and continues to grow. The poorest half of the world population owns only 2% of the total global wealth. while the richest 10% own 76% of all the wealth. So a huge inequality. And the same you see in terms of the production of greenhouse gases. So a few produce a lot, and the others that actually do not produce suffer the consequences. So they suggested three keys to unlock the future, and that's my perspective to reprogram the planet, redefine the relationship between humans and nature. That was the key point. The second, ensuring the lasting prosperity for all. And this basically is make the sustainable lifestyle the easiest choice. You know, instead of paying more, instead of having an economic system that doesn't work for sustainability, let's check that. Consider the use of products and equipment, not the acquisition that involves more energy and materials, and make supply chains better for US and free party. So to ensure this lastly profitable for all, we also have to have new statistics, not only the GDP, and adapt indicators to help measure drawbacks towards sustainable development. Finally, let's invest in a better future. And we have these 5 keys. I could talk about the 17 sustainable goals, sustainable development goals, approved in 2015, but I really prefer this piece that work both in English and in Portuguese. People, prosperity, peace, partnership, and planet. And then we look at the third crisis, which is the use of resources. You can see the Earth's overshoot day. Basically, it's when our renewable resources finish up, and we need to use our credit card. Okay. And by the way, this was for 2035. Portugal is there. May 5th. Qatar is the worst, Uruguay the best, but basically this means that we need more planets than we have, because we go to the savings account. We just do not manage to use just the renewable resources for free that nature gives us every year. Just to say, in the book All Things Considered, in the beginning of the 20th century, said there are 2 ways to have enough. One is to continue to accumulate more and more. The other is to desire less. And the problem is that we make our happiness more based on the first part of this sentence than on the second, which is much harder, but it gives us a completely different perspective. And simple steps like food. You know, let's use less and little cooking, because the ecological impact, the climate impact is much lower. Let's look at locally grown, let's look at prevent food waste, unprocessed foods, organic products, more vegetables because they are in the beginning of the food chain. And also, that's a real way of thinking. And let's start to first receive, connect, refuse, and this has an order. Okay, so reduce, reuse, repair. We need much more repairing than buying a new product when it's damaged. You go to the supermarket, and the first thing, if you have a damaged product, here is a new one. Okay, so that the warranty was last like 3 years. So we really need to change this mindset from the companies and from ourselves. And recycle, by the way, is the last one, because we need to implement the other one first. So we have here a mission to Europe, to governments and administration, companies, individuals, and the European Green Deal was really key in 2019, and we can't destroy these goals, because they are really important for the competitiveness of Europe. It's not a problem of climate or biodiversity, it's a problem when we want to have a united Europe that is more inventive than other parts of the world. So the top challenges for ourselves, for our country, for the world, I would like to tell you first the broader ones. Let's promote transparency and rigor in information supporting decision making. We do need science. We do need knowledge. We do need transparency. Let's prevent conflicts and promote a dialogical approach in the line with sustainability. Let's avoid stranded assets that compromise objectives. Does it make sense for us to continue investing in natural gas, or if nuclear is much more expensive, why don't we go to renewable sources and try to use batteries? All have, we know, some impacts in terms of deep environment and social. Let's minimize it. Anticipate decisions that condition major goals. Let's evoke key decision makers, but also the public. And now let's look at 5 challenges for countries, particularly including Portugal. Let's invest in quality of life and well-being, especially in cities. This should be the main word. Quality of life, well-being. People need to be happy. They need everything to actually strive. Include climate ambition, adapt to climate change, and we have those impacts here, preserve biodiversity, and also implement principles of a circular economy. Let's change the consumption for us, for each one of us, change the consumption paradigm, focus on sufficiency, and very important new word, reducing waste, more sustainable mobility, invest in energy efficiency, particularly in buildings, change our heating habits, participate in decision-making processes. Let's have a voice, let's make that a difference. So we need to change to what is currently, an issue of continuous growth, efficiency, wealth, have more, a constant dissatisfaction than we fulfill by having more and more products, meaning, thriving the planet to a future where well-being, quality of life, sufficiency, frugality, and personal happiness is part of our project. We need a new era where we have responsibility, urgency, creativity and innovation, resilience, and optimism, which is we are sometimes lacking. But definitely we need to save our planet, and I believe that all of you can join and make part of this movement to actually reprogram our planet. Thank you so much.